Okay. All right, let's rock and roll. All right, so welcome to the Forge Online Bootcamp, taking place April 2022. It's crazy just to say that number. But yeah, so my name and your host for today, it's Jaime Rosales. So I'm a senior developer advocate for the Forge team. If you're a Twitter user, AfroJME, it's my handle. You might be asking why Afro. I actually can grow the hair to be like an Afro. So I picked that handle a long time ago. Beginning of 2020, I actually cut it all off. I needed a fresh start for the year. So right now, like it will get back. But as of now, yeah, that's where we at. So a little bit about the bootcamp. So this event itself, it's taking place during 4 days. We have parallel tracks happening right now with .NET as well. This track is Node.js, so hopefully you guys are in the correct track. If you're not, that's okay. I'm not gonna get offended if you switch to the .NET one, so it's all good. We're gonna have 4 sessions during the day. Each session, it's gonna do some coding. You're gonna code along with us. And in between sessions, I'm gonna leave you to take care of the part that I just demoed by yourself, and then submit questions, and that way we can reach out to you and answer them. Okay, so all sessions will be recorded, and then we will be publish them also after we're done with the sessions itself. So in case you want to rewatch this later, if you miss something, don't worry about it. We're recording. I think I am. Yes, I am. Okay. So today, Monday, April 25th, we have the topic of the simple viewer. So we're going to be creating a project that basically allows us to use different services within the Forge platform. Uploading a file, so using an object storage service in order to do that. But previous to that, also, we need an authentication. So we're going to need a token that are kind of like the keys for us to be able to use the different services within the Forge platform. We're going to be uploading to a storage service in the cloud. Then we're going to be requesting a translation of those CAD models that we're going to be using. And then the viewer itself will let us visualize the 2D and the 3D designs that we decide to upload into that. And if you don't have any CAD models today, don't worry about it. I can tell you actually where we can get them. And I think we have some links within the tutorial that you can download simple architectural designs, or if you're more into the manufacturing side of it, I can also point you out to where you can get some of those models as well. Okay. So, like I said, day 1, simple viewer, Node.js for the track. And we're going to be focusing on this link. So what we are going to do is I'm going to actually click on this link, and I'm going to paste it for you guys to go over that. But before that, so what's going to be our goal for today? So the goal for today, like I said, it's a simple viewer that allows us to interact with the functionality that the viewer includes, allows us to translate, upload files, create basically a web application that would allow us to do this stuff. Okay. Before I move along, I was trying to click on this thing, but it just didn't make it. So let me see if I have to switch screens, and that's the reason why. 1 second. Oh. Okay, so I'm gonna copy this link for you guys. I'm gonna send it over in the chat, so that way you guys can have it. And I'm gonna go over this as well in just a second, so just bear with me. Okay, so let's get back to the slides. So like I said, goal for today, uploading a file, storing it in the object storage service, requesting the translation, visualizing the model directly into the viewer, where we have a toolbar that allows us to do checks on the metadata of the model itself, do some measurements, do some other stuff that actually are pretty cool within the viewer itself. So that's basically the goal for today. Pretty simple. And in order to make it this like a tutorial in the bootcamp itself, we have broken the agenda into a couple of parts. So starting with session 1, which is going to be the intro and setup. So this is going to be taking place during the first hour. And I think I can actually do this a little bit faster than 1 hour. So if everybody is up to the point where we do the intro and setup, and you guys feel comfortable with the setup itself, and then we're ready to move into session 2, we can probably combine this too. And that way we don't have you here for all the rest of the time here. Okay. So, and then we can do the break for 30 minutes where we can do Q&A. So if you have any problems with the setup or anything like that, I can promote you to a panelist, and then we can start like looking at your screen, or if you want to just open up your mic and ask the question away, that's what I'm here for. Okay. So yeah, so let's get started. And then session 3 is going to be focusing into the uploading and translating service, by finishing with session 4, which is going to be the viewer and the user interface of our application today, to later on finish up with a break and a Q&A session. Okay, I think we're all good with that. So let's get started with session 1. So for session 1, we need a couple of prerequisites to get started. So those are, well, this is an Autodesk Forge bootcamp, so we're gonna need a Forge account. And the Forge account itself, if you don't have one yet, you can create one with your email and activate the free trial. So it's a free trial of 90 days. You get some cloud credits in there in order for you to use for translation. Since we're going to be using one of the services that does need cloud credits, we're going to be needing that part to be initialized. And then once we have that Forge account, we're going to go ahead and create the Forge application. All right. So this Forge application will give us the credentials. So Forge client ID, Forge client secret, and a callback URL as well, in order for us to be able to interact with the server that we're going to be creating. So that's going to be one of the prerequisites. And now, in regards to the environment, so since this is the Node.js track, so we need Node.js. So if you don't have Node.js yet, you can get it from the nodejs.org site. And the version that we recommend is the LTS version, basically the long-term support version. They're a cool team, and they have this like experimental versions of Node.js with new functionalities. We don't need those for this bootcamp, to be honest. So I will say, let's just stay safe. Let's go with the LTS version. That it's the one that we know that it's actually good and it works, and it doesn't have any experimental bugs or features in there. And then for the IDE side of it, we, the team of advocates, recommend the Visual Studio Code IDE. It's a free tool that you can get. And one of the reasons that we recommend it is because we also have a Forge extension that allows you to do many of the different interactions with the platform directly from the Visual Studio environment. So, and I will give you a preview if we have time. I'm pretty sure we're gonna have time. So I can give you a preview of how that thing works in order for you to later on just get more tools in order to work out with the platform itself. Okay. All right. So now we're gonna head over to the demo of how to do that. Okay. So let me switch my screen, and I think you can see it, right? So this is the link that I posted. And you know what? I think I'm just gonna actually switch screens. So give me 1 second. We're gonna bring it over to my first screen. That's gonna be easier. Okay, awesome. That way, whenever the recording shows up, you don't see the side of my head, but you see on the front. Okay, so yeah, so like I was saying, so we have the Forge tutorial.autodesk.io. So this is actually exciting because this is a new tutorial that we're using now. So you guys are kind of like one of the first ones to try it out in order to we went through this process of deciding to create the new tutorial in order to just make it a little bit more interactive, structure, cleaner, updated. So it was much needed, and also I was kind of getting tired of teaching the previous one. Like I just needed something new that surprised me a little bit. Okay. So like I said, we need some prerequisites to take care. So we're gonna head over to forge.autodesk.com, where we're gonna be taking advantage of that trial subscription that I told you that is gonna be valid for 3 months. So you can head over and then click on the sign up to try Forge. This will bring you up to a sign-in screen where you're gonna be using your Autodesk ID in order to create your account itself, to later on head over to apps, and I'll do that in a second. I'm just gonna go through this really quickly. Then we're gonna do create an app button. So we're gonna create an app. We're gonna call it, I don't know, let's call it Simple Viewer Node.js Bootcamp April 2022, something like that. Or it can be even something simpler, you decide. We're gonna give it, like I said, the app name, a description, and then also a callback URL. So if you see in the tutorial, we do have a caution piece in the tutorial itself that we need to pay attention to the callback URL field. So the address for the application that we're gonna be using today, it's going to be this HTTP localhost 8080 API auth callback. And the reason behind it's because the tutorial itself is going to be using that callback in order to show us progress along the way as we advance within the tutorial. Okay, so I'll say keep in mind this, and that way we can continue with no problems. We're going to be enabling the APIs that you want your application to have access. So unless you have any specific reason for limiting this, I will suggest just leave everything clicked. Some of them have use on the cloud credit, some other ones don't. But I will say if this is one of your first interactions with the platform, you're better safe than sorry to just leave everything marked. Okay. So once you create the app, we're gonna get back a result that says this is the client ID, this is the client secret, app name, description, and the callback URL that we put. And remember to please use that callback URL that we specify in the caution section. Okay, so now one thing to do, let me see, this is Troy next to other products. Okay, this is for tomorrow's tutorial, so we can keep going. So I have created my new tutorial app. So I have my client ID, client secret, app name, callback URL, and the API selected. Okay, so you can go ahead and then log in, go to your apps, and then create a new app. And then this probably is going to look a little bit different to what you show, but just you click create app and then go through the process and the steps that I told you on this section. And let me just quickly check. Oh, no, actually, now you guys have it. Beautiful. All right, so I can actually tell you that. So when we do create app, in this case, we're gonna be using a traditional web app. So the traditional web app is basically a server-side web application that can securely store secrets and supports two-legged and three-legged authentication. So in our case, we're gonna be using this one, okay? This server-to-server one is when we're not using any like user interface and we wanna do some admin stuff within BIM 360 or ACC. Desktop mobile single app page basically are designated for apps that run natively in certain kind of devices. So let's say you're developing something like an iOS app or an Android application or something like that, that you can have an authentication with PKC protocol. So that's another way. So in this case, today we're going to be doing the traditional web app. Okay. All right. So let me head back to, and I hope that answered your question, Liang. So now the next step is the environment setup. So one thing, I have another, yes, okay, cool. So one thing that we have to keep in mind is make sure your tutorial, please, it's always on the Node.js and VS Code tab. The reason why it's because it basically changes to different environments whenever we switch on the tabs. So I'll say this track is Node.js. Please make sure that we have Node.js selected. Okay. So Node.js VS Code. We're gonna be doing. Do we need Git for this part? Probably we don't. We can skip it to do just install of Node. So let me open this new one. So we're gonna head over to the nodejs.org site. So if we go to the first one, in my case, I'm on a MacBook, so it basically shows up which one it's my OS in order to download the recommended one. I already have Node.js, so I don't need to do that. One way that you can check actually is that if you open up your terminal, let's see, let me bring this thing in here. Yeah, so if you open up your terminal, you can type something like node-v, and this will give you what version of Node you have installed. Same thing with npm, which we're gonna be using, okay? So once you start Node, basically npm comes in with it. So I'll say that's one way that you can check if you have Node already installed. If not, just go ahead and install it, and that way we can continue to move forward with that. Okay, so now, and then the editor of choice or the IDE that we recommend is basically Visual Studio. My Zoom thing goes in the way. So, and again, because it recognizes that I'm on a MacBook, basically tells me to download the stable build. But you have a drop down also in order to just select which kind of OS are you going to be using in this case, and then you can download from there. And I will say also, please stay with the stable one. I guess there is a lot of really cool new features incoming and so on with the Insiders one, but let's keep it safe. So just stay with the stable one. Okay. So I'm also not going to download that today. I already have Visual Studio on my side. So I'll say just make sure that you get started. And this one, I'll do this later, not right now. And this is my drinking water reminder. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and go into Simple Viewer. So technically, the first session comes to an end before I start with this. So I'm going to go off track a bit and ask all of you, do you feel comfortable? Are you okay with what I just showed you? Meaning, do all of you have the Forge app, the Forge APIs, keys, and basically credentials with the callback URL? Do you have Node.js and you have Visual Studio installed in order for us to continue? So I'm gonna ask some interaction from you, and in the chat window, I need to hear a yes from everybody. Okay, so because if that's the case, I don't want to have you wait for an hour for me to come back to do the second session. And I'm just being conscious of your time. Okay, so I want you to to like feel comfortable. And like I said, if the answer is no, you need a little bit more time, that's completely okay as well. You can say, no, I need time to install this and all that, and that way we can continue. Okay. So I see 5 yeses so far. I need a couple more. 6. Let's keep going. Let's see who else wants me to continue, and that way we can take advantage of the time. And in the second section, I can actually pretty much finish it before the hour finish. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Awesome. All right. Everybody said yes. Oof. Perfect. So it is recorded. Everybody said yes. So I can continue. Okay. So let me swap screens again. And at any time, if you have questions, please just ask away. Okay. Okay. So that was the demo for that intro. And this is what I was telling you, right? So if not, we will have to wait a long time until that next session, which is probably within 9:30. That's like in an hour, something like that. But so this is a check for you. This is a check for you. Check and check. Okay. So good. And we're gonna continue then. So next session. So session 2. Basically, we're gonna be focusing in the creation of the server and also the authorization part. Okay. So, and why do we need this? So basically, the architecture of our application, we have like a separate application, right? And then we're gonna be focusing in these 3 layers that you're seeing here. So you can see this in the diagram. We have one section for the server where we're gonna have our HTML, like CSS, etc., running through a router. Okay, so this is where the data is stored. You can access our like platform service directly into here. And then the access to the service and data is controlled through the authentication of Auth 2.0. So, and we're using that token-based authentication for the authorization. So if you're not familiar with what a token is, basically it's just your magic key in order to get access and grant your application access to a service. So then we will be building the client side. So that's going to be the front end part, and also the server side, which is the back end part. Server side will be providing static files, like I said, the HTML, the JS, the CSS file into the client side. So the client side, it's whatever the client gets to see. So the user interface, the application, the website, and server side is what happened like behind doors. And those are going to be the files that are responsible for the UI itself. Okay. So, so let's get started with that. So first, we're gonna head over to the application setup, where we're gonna be initialization of a new project and installation of the dependencies. So we're gonna prepare the app with the configuration.js, the launch configuration, and then in there, VS Code allows us to create a file which is called a launch.json that basically automates our process of debugging that when we want to run a project, right? Later on, we're going to be creating a basic server, so server.js. And once we're done with that, we're going to test it out. We want to see if the server is actually working, right? So probably the server is not going to do anything. It's just going to give us an expected error, but that's okay. That's what we actually are trying to focus in. And then later on, we're going to be moving into the authentication piece, where this is going to be where we generate the access tokens. So we're going to create a folder structure that is going to be called services, then Forge, then Auth, and then Auth.js. And we're going to be adding the server endpoints in another folder, which is going to be dedicated to the routes in the Auth.js, and then also route to that file in the server.js. And then we're going to test it out. And then this test actually should give us back a token. Okay, so we're going to do a demo of how to do this. Okay, so let me stop my screen and swap. And actually, I need to do something really quick, which is swapping my internet. So just give me 1 second. Okay. Sorry about that. I had to actually do a swapping thing because something weird happens with Node when I'm in an Autodesk office, and that's the reason I need to swap. But I think we're okay now. Can you guys hear me okay? I know that you guys lost me there for a second, but I just want to make sure that everything is okay now, and then we can continue. Okay, awesome. Thank you, Jason and Felipe, for confirming that. So let's get started again. Okay, that's not what I wanted to show. What I want to show is this thing. Okay, so now, like I said, simple viewer introduction. So we're gonna go over authentication part and also the setup. So we're gonna start with the application setup. So and the first thing that we do is that we're gonna create a new folder for our project. Okay, so we're gonna navigate into the command line in order to do this. But one of the benefits of having Visual Studio Code is that we do have, let me open one. This close, this is no, close, close, close. I'm gonna open a new one. Yes, okay. So now we have, as you see, we have a section for a terminal, and we can create a new terminal in here, okay? And then we can navigate to a certain kind of path. So I'm going to do that. I have a couple of folders that are dedicated for me to this. I'm gonna do cd into, actually let's create, make their bootcamp April 2022. Okay, so we're gonna cd into this one. Bootcamp April 2022. So nothing in here. Okay, so we're gonna do another directory here. I'm gonna call it simple. Simple viewer. cd into simple viewer, and then we're good there. Okay, so now we can do an npm init. Okay, so this will initialize our project. We can do -yes because we want to say yes on everything, right? So as you can see now, it just created something that it's a package JSON file where we have simple viewer, the version, a description, a main, index.js file, the script, keywords, author, license, and then that's it. So if we check our folder now, what's on it, you see that now we have a file, which is the package.json. Okay, so let's head back into here. So you see we do npm init-y. So we can get started with that. And then we're gonna need to install the Node.js dependencies, which is going to be express.js, which is basically our middleware in order to use the Express server. We're gonna be using also Express Formidable to handle the multi-part form data requests, and then also the Forge APIs. Okay, so we can actually, this thing has a cool copy link here. So we can go back here. We can do npm install -- save Express Formidable, and Forge APIs. And let's see, yeah. This is the reason that I needed to change my network. Okay, so now we have here, and as you see, we have no modules, package lock JSON, which basically gets created automatically at the time that we do an npm install of one of those Node modules. And then we have the package.json. Okay. So now we can head back to, I don't remember if I have the command installed, but if not, we can do open here. We're gonna do open folder, Forge development, Bootcamp, simple viewer. So this will open a new stuff for us. But now we have the folder structure directly here. So we don't want to do this right now. And then we want to also bring back that terminal. I like using this terminal in Visual Studio because it doesn't matter if you have a Mac or a Windows machine. It's basically using the same kind of like command line in this terminal itself. So whatever I do in here, you guys can replicate exactly, and that's not going to be a problem. Okay, so let's go back to here. So now, once we did the npm install, in our package JSON, we're going to be able to see that we have new dependencies installed. So Express Formidable, and Forge APIs. And I will show you this in a second. I just want to continue with the folder structure. So now we're going to be creating subfolders within that simple viewer project. We're going to create one that is going to be called www.root, which this is where we're going to put all our client side assets. So HTML, CSS, JavaScript, images, etc. We're going to create one for routes. This is where we're going to be implementing all our server endpoints. So everything that is going to be talking to our server is going to be going into this folder itself. And then another one, which is going to be the services folder. And this is where we're going to be keeping all the server-side logic so that it can be shared across different endpoints, that it's going to communicate with the routes. And then basically the whole behind scenes of our server is going to go into the service folder. Okay, so now once we create that, and when we open our project, we're going to be seeing this part in here. Okay, so let me go back to Visual Studio, and then in here, I kind of like to do it directly from here. Okay. So, but you can also use this thing here as well. So you can do one, let's say, routes. And then just make sure that when you want to add a new folder, you click outside, because if you don't click outside, it's going to create a subfolder inside of routes. Okay. And then this one is going to be called services. Okay. So now, and then the dependencies inside of package JSON basically are this ones. So the versions might change, but that's okay. It's just because there's new ones available. Okay. So now we have routes, services, www root, package lock, package JSON, no modules. Okay. So if we go back to, so no modules, routes, sorry, services, www root, package lock, package JSON. And then we're gonna head over to the application configuration. And now we're gonna be creating a new file, which is going to be this config.js. So this config.js, it's basically what it's gonna configure the use of our environmental variables. So client ID, client secret. If we define the bucket, can be something as well. If we define, let's say, port as well there, but if not, like we have like certain ones that we are kind of like created already for that. And then we're just going to be exporting those values to be later on used in any of the other folders itself. So like I said, simply reading the environmental variables with the process environment and giving our app those basic credentials that we actually are going to need. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's copy this thing. And we're going to head over here. So like I said, click outside and we're going to create a new one. Just going to call config.js. Okay. So now let the Forge client ID, client secret, bucket port equal to the process.environment. If this one's missing, we're gonna give you a warning that we don't have the client ID and client secret. So that's something that we need to fix. Other than that, our application is not gonna work. And the Forge bucket, it's going to be either a value that you add into the Forge bucket, or if we don't have one, what it's going to do is that it's gonna grab the client ID value, set up everything in lowercase, because Forge buckets need to be all lowercase, okay? And then add -basic-app. Why do we use the client ID? So Forge buckets basically are AWS S3 buckets. And the name itself needs to be unique across all the AWS users of S3 buckets around the world. So trust me, test bucket, it's been created. So in order to avoid that kind of error, since the client ID becomes basically a unique number for you, we can guarantee that it's no other bucket created out there with that kind of value. So something to keep in mind. It's always a good practice, actually, even on the AWS S3 side of it, to use a prefix for the bucket names. Okay, so that kind of like guarantees uniqueness in the creation of this. And then on the port, if we specify a port, well, we can specify it. But like I said, with the tutorial, we're going to be using 8080. And then we're going to be exporting those values in order for us to have access to them. And that's not what I wanted to type. There we go. So we're going to save that file. And now we have our config.js. So then we're going to be, and this, you can read more about the global uniqueness of the buckets in the link to the documentation if you desire to, or you can just trust me. Then we're going to create a launch configuration. So one cool thing about Visual Studio Code is that you can run the add configuration side of it and then choose Node.js, and this will create a launch JSON structure. But we're going to be doing something a little bit different. So we're going to copy this one, head over back here. And now in the run add configuration, we're going to select Node.js. As you see, it created this, this kind of like default structure for the Node.js side of it. But we want to use the one that we got. So basically what this is doing is that the configuration type is going to be Node. So it's going to be launching a server, and it's going to start, and it's going to read the environmental file that it's going to be in the workspace folder, this location here. And it's going to be looking for a file called .env. We don't have it yet, but we're gonna create it, okay? So now this is our next step. So we're defining a single launch configuration called launch server. So when we do the start, like the npm start command, it's going to be running this launch configuration. It's gonna look for the environmental variables where we have the key equals the value. So in this case, the forge client ID equals your client ID, forge client secret equals your client secret, and bucket, which is an optional one if you desire to, okay? So, and the reason behind this is because whenever you submit this project, let's say into a GitHub repository, something to keep in mind is that your credentials do not need to go into that file, into that GitHub repo. So be just sure that whenever you add a gitignore file, you include .env as one of those files that don't get published into GitHub in order to avoid security problems with your client ID and client secret being exposed. But in case it gets exposed, you can always refresh the client secret and they were not gonna have access anymore, or just delete the app and create a new one, and then that's it. So just be careful whenever you use that. So we're gonna copy this. We're gonna create a new file in here, which is gonna be called .env. And then paste that. And then we're gonna need forge client ID, forge client secret. So we're gonna do that pretty quickly, actually. So let's do forge app. Let's create a new one. Bootcamp. We're gonna call it April. This is April 2022. Traditional web app create. You're gonna see probably a lot of stuff. There we go. So now just keep in mind that we need to modify our localhost 8080. I'll do that in a second. So copy this one. Client ID goes inside of the quotes. So just make sure that we don't get rid of those quotes. Client secret. Don't worry, you're gonna see it, but I can actually change it once I stop recording. Okay, so then save. I'm not gonna do any forge bucket because we're gonna create a new one either way. But then, and then we're gonna do a change on this. So edit localhost API auth callback and the callback URL. And then we're gonna do save on this. And now we have our localhost 8080 API auth callback. Okay, so we're up to that part. And I'm just gonna check the chat really quick. What is process.env? So basically, when you run, let's say, how do I explain this? So they're basically process environment variables. So there are variables that are stored in your session itself that will get to run whenever you're debugging, let's say, a project or something like that. In our case, this is our .env file. So, and then these ones are our variables. And so whenever config.js uses, looks for forge client ID, like these values don't exist anywhere, but our launch JSON will basically use an environmental file that will assign those values across the entire session. And then when it's running, those variables are gonna be available within our development itself. So, and the reason that you use this is because instead of hard coding the client ID, the client secret, and so on, you can pass this project to another colleague of yours, and he can create his own env file with his own values for those environmental variables, and then don't have a problem with the run of the of the project itself, instead of hard coding in every single place, client ID, client secret, and so on. Because you will see when we go along with the project that we use this kind of like a lot everywhere. So it's basically just giving a generalized access to environmental variables within the project itself. Okay, so I hope that answered the question. Okay, so now let me move forward. So we have client ID, client secret, callback URLs. So we're good in that regard. So now we finish this part. And then there is also just a bit of the, actually there's not this, that's something, that's a good actually suggestion. We're gonna add a little bit of information about process environment in here as well. So next, we will create our basic server. So again, let's make sure we are on the Node.js and VS Code tab. So we're going to be creating a server.js file where we're going to be requiring the use of the Express server, and then also requiring the environmental file variable port that comes in from the config.js. Our app later on will be using Express. Run everything that is a static content from the www root folder. In this case, we don't have anything yet in there, so there's nothing to run, but it will be running once we start adding stuff. And then we're gonna be doing app listen port function, and then where that server is gonna be listening in. So for now, the server isn't doing much, just serving static assets from the wroot subfolder, which is currently empty, and reporting any errors to the console and back to the client. So next, we're going to be adding a start Node.js server into the package JSON in order for us to try it out. Sorry. And, all right, so let's gonna copy this. Give me 1 second. So copy server.js. We go back into here. We add a new file, server.js, and then we're gonna paste this, save it, and then in the package, we're gonna add a new script. So we're gonna add start. So when we do npm start, it's going to do node server.js. Okay. Using another keyboard, so I keep hitting Alt S instead of Command S to save. So now we have server.js, package.json is doing node server.js, which is what it's basically telling us to add here in the package.json. And now we actually got to the point where we can try it out. So we can do that by doing run, start debugging, or we can press F5 into Visual Studio Code and later on go into localhost 88. If I go on it right now, there's nothing, right? So there's no server running, but we can run now. It says server listening on port 8080. Okay, it did node server.js. Basically, that's the start. So now if we refresh, yay, we have a cannot get. And that's expected actually, but that's our server already running. So it's not an empty local host anymore or anything like that. It's basically our server already running. Okay, so that's good. That's success for this part. And it says right here, the server should respond with cannot get because we haven't added any logic to this just yet. So that's going to be the topic on the next step. So let's continue with the next step. So authentication. So authentication basically it is always good practice to treat different kind of permits or like permissions with the token, depending on what you're going to be doing. Like the tip says here, it's good practice to generate an internal token that it's basically more capable of doing stuff. In this case, let's say create storage locations, upload content to those storage locations, create translations of those files, which those translations are going to cost us money, or cloud credits or flex tokens, whatever you want to call it. And then, so those tend to be like kind of like more at risk tokens if they get exposed. So we want to treat them as with a little bit more careful, being internal ones. And then we have the other ones, which are basically public tokens. So they have like fewer capabilities. In this case, visualization of a model. So yeah, if the token gets exposed, someone can probably view a model, but they cannot do anything with that. They cannot download the seed file. They cannot alter it. They cannot delete. They cannot do stuff like that. But it's always good to just keep a good practice with internals and public ones. And that's what we're gonna do in this side. Okay, so now we're gonna be creating a Forge folder. Under that Forge folder, we're gonna be creating the services folder. And inside of that, we're gonna be creating a new file that's gonna call Auth.js. So this is where we're gonna be implementing all the Forge authentication logic for our service application. Right? So using the Forge API's node module, we're going to be getting one of the functions that it's present in there, which is the Auth client two-legged. And then Forge client ID, Forge client secret that are coming from the config.js. You'll remember that we set up that in the environment. We're going to be creating an internal Auth client. So we're going to be creating a new authentication client two-legged, passing in ID, client secret, certain scopes, which is basically the permissions that we want to give our token, and a public one in order to give just one of the permissions to the token itself. And before I move forward, I want to ask you, do you guys can hear me okay? Do you see me okay? If not, I can actually switch back to my other network. Okay. All right. Let me do just a quick switch. It might actually disconnect again, but I'll be right back. Let me see. Just a quick yes from anyone. That way I can continue. Other than that, I'm going to be talking to myself. Let's pick someone. Okay. All right. So I'm back again. Okay. Now we're with better internet. I think we should be okay now. That was the last one, I promise. All right. Okay. So let me get back to where we were. All right. So now we're going to create that folder structure, and we're going to also pass in the code. We have a couple of asynchronous functions in here in order to do the get internal token and get public token. And we're going to export those in order for us to be using them through the project itself. Okay. So let me copy this, and then let's head over back to here. We can stop our server, actually. I don't think we need to keep this one running for now. We go back here. I'm going to put my Zoom bar in this side for a second. And then inside of services, we said that we're going to add a new folder. So we can click services and add one. It's going to be called Forge. And inside of Forge, we're going to add a new file, which is going to be called auth.js. Let me see if I did that correct. Create a folder under the service folder, and oh yes, I did. Good. All right. So now, again, we do we get the auth to client two-legged from the Forge APIs. So if you basically do, let's say, some navigation into that, you see that it goes inside of the node module that has all the different functionality for the different functions within the Forge platform. So we have one for three-legged, one for buckets and all that stuff. So this is always like quite powerful to use. So we don't have to retype all the stuff and all the logic in order to create that. So it's always good to just like know where is it going. But now by simply calling this, we already know that it's expecting the client ID, the client secret, the scopes, and also if it's going to be an auto refresh or not. Okay. So we create that. We save this file. We have the authentication. Now I think it's time for us to create the route. So we're gonna head back to, so the code creates two authentication clients, one for generating tokens internal and one for generating public token, okay? Which is basically what we just described before here. Okay, so now in the server endpoint, now we can expose this functionality through the first endpoint in our server. So we're gonna create another auth.js file, but now it's going to be under the route subfolder. So this basically will, whenever we have a route that calls /token, is going to get a public token that this is basically coming from the services Forge auth.js that we just created. Okay, so now we copy this one, we go into routes, and in routes, we're gonna create auth.js. And then what we want, it's basically to expose that express router, right? So whenever, if we do localhost 8080 /token, it will make a call to get public token in order to show us a token itself. And I think we're gonna do that right now to test out how this thing actually works. But before we finish and we do that part, we have to make sure that we are passing that new route into our application. So we're gonna be doing API auth. And if you see this, starts looking a little bit familiar to what we basically said, API auth callback, all right? So let me go back here, API auth. Yeah, so let's copy this one. I think it's only that line, but I'm just gonna be safe. Basically, we just added one more line, which is this one. So now we save this. We have the services Forge, we have the routes, and now we can try it out. So if we do another run start debugging, pressing F5, and we head over to this, now we're gonna be able to see that access token. So run start debugging, listening on port 8080 as well again. So if we go again to 8080, basically it's gonna give us the same error, but now we have a new route, which is going to be this one. And now we have an access token, okay? So mine looks pretty nice because I have a Chrome extension that basically interacts with JSON formats. So it's something to just that you can use. I think Peter added something here. Yeah, JSON formatter. So you can actually get that JSON formatter if you want, in order to not look like a lot of like characters in the screen, but it just looks a little bit more organized. So now we know that our service and our route actually work because it's getting us that token that we're gonna need to later on interact with the rest of the stuff. Okay. So yeah, so that gets us to the end of session 2. So I think, oh, I'm 2 minutes over, but let's see. Let me switch of screens, and that way we can continue. Demo, PowerPoint. Okay. All right. So now I think you're seeing the slides, correct? Okay, awesome. Thank you, Rick. All right. So now your turn. Okay. So now I know that we cramped 2 sessions into one, but I think it's for taking advantage of this time, and I got the confirm from each one of you that you are okay to continue. So that way we can get back to it. Okay. So now I'm gonna give you some time to go over the application setup, initialize new project, and so on. I will check back with you in about 30 minutes. I'm gonna be modifying some of this thing, so that way we don't get confused. Actually, let me do that right now. So this is what we need. So I will see you back at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time for the next session, which is going to be session 3.2. So let me just fix this really quick. 1 second. Okay. So now. Oh, that's okay, Rick. Don't worry about it. Thanks for letting me know, though. Okay. So now, yes. So session 3, 9:30. So I'll say it's your turn to go over this. I'm gonna take a quick break, but if you have any questions, please just send it over on the Q&A or in the chat. Either way, it's fine. And as soon as I'm back, I'm gonna start looking into it. Okay. So yeah, thanks for joining us, and I will be back in a couple of minutes. So good luck with this, and let me know, please, if you have any questions. Okay. All right. See you in a bit. All right. So now we're gonna go back to desktop 2. Okay. So welcome back. So as of now, you should have your application set up. So initialization of the new project, dependencies, preparation of the app, configuration using config.js, launch configuration using the VS Code launch.json for Node.js projects, the creation of a basic server in the server.js file. On the authentication piece, we are doing the generate access tokens endpoints within the forge auth.js inside of services folder, and sorry, the functions, and then adding the server endpoint in the routes to later on do a reference to that in the server.js. Okay. So now next topic is going to be the upload and translate topic for session 3. So basically, we're going to be creating the logic for the listing of the uploading files. And here we're going to be handling the use of different services within Forge. In this case, in the previous session, we only used the authentication service. So passing in our API keys, we're able to get back a token with certain kind of permissions that will allow us to do the different kind of interactions that we're going to have with the services later on. Now we're going to be doing the creation of an object storage service where we're going to be uploading our files. The translation service, which is going to be using the model derivative service in order to translate that metadata into something viewable for later on be used with the Forge viewer itself. And then we're also going to be adding endpoints for each one of those references of those services, and later on test that out. Okay, so that's going to be the only thing for session 3. I say only thing, but it's quite some work in there. So I think we're going to have enough time. Okay, so now let me switch back to my screen. Where are you guys? Okay, so now we finish up, and you guys should be up to the point where you create, you get actually an access token back, and a valid access token. Okay, so now we're going to be moving into the data and derivative section. So like I said, in this step, we're going to be expanding our server in order to be able to list models, upload them, and also translate them. So translation, basically, the model derivative service supports around 60+ different file formats. This can be Revit file, IFC files, Navisworks files, Fusion files, SketchUp files, Rhino files, IFCs, I already said that. There's so many other ones. There's so many that in the CAD world itself that they're allowed, they're present, and then you can translate in order to be able to visualize their geometrical content and also the metadata itself. So one of the reasons that the Forge platform itself is so powerful and vastly used is because it allows you to basically structurize the data of these files into one that kind of gets generalized and be able to visualize it without the need of thinking, oh, this viewer that I need to visualize this file needs to be an AutoCAD viewer. This one needs to be a Rhino viewer, and so on. So that's kind of like the main idea of this. So in this case, we're going to be using data management for our object storage service. So this is where our bucket, our container, right, gets created. And then from there, also, it's able to store inside of that container the file that we're going to be uploading. And at the same time, also, the resulting file after the translation in order for the viewer to know its location in order to know what to show you. So we're going to be creating a new file under the services Forge subfolder. We're going to call it OSS, so Object Storage Service. This will be where we implement all that OSS logic in order to ensure that, for example, if a bucket exists. If it doesn't exist, well, we create a bucket. Once we create a bucket, we also want to list what kind of objects we have in that bucket. And also give us the opportunity to upload objects into that bucket itself. Okay, so we're going to be using the Forge SDK as well, again. So as you can see, we have const into the buckets API, objects API, that requires the Forge API module. We're going to be getting the name from the Forge bucket. And remember that whenever we're using this value, if it doesn't exist, it will take that client ID, make it to lowercase, and then just add, I think it was called like app something at the end. I'll check again. And then for this case, we need an internal token because this internal token has the right set of scope and permissions in order for us to be able to generate and create this kind of containers, upload data, download data, and all that stuff. So that's the reason we're going to be using an internal token. And since it's running in our server, it's more secure and it's not like prone to be exposed through that. And that's one of the good benefits of using something like the Express server in this case. Okay, so now let me copy this and then we can go over. So again, services folder, Forge subfolder, OSS.js. So services folder, Forge folder, new file, OSS.js. Okay, so we paste this thing here. Okay, so again, function to ensure the bucket exists. We call in the buckets API the function to get the bucket details, where we need to pass in the bucket key, right? So there's three things: bucket key, the authorization client, and with that we can get back a result if that bucket exists or not. If it doesn't exist, we're gonna be catching that error, but instead of triggering just an error, we're gonna create that bucket, right? So we're gonna be using, again, the buckets API, but now we're gonna be using a different function in order to create a bucket. So if you see it says, use this endpoint to create a bucket. Buckets are arbitrary spaces created and owned by applications. So in here, we're gonna be passing the bucket key, which in this case is going to be the name that it takes it from here whenever we call it, and you will see where we call it later. The policy, which in this case is going to be a temporary policy. We have three different kinds of policies for buckets. We have temporary, transient, and persistent. So transient buckets, they expire. I think I might be getting this mixed up, but I'm pretty sure it's transient bucket expires within 24 hours. So whatever you have within those buckets, if the policy in your bucket is transient, it will expire within 24 hours. If it's temporary, you can keep the data up to 30 days. And persistent keeps the data, I will say forever in quotes, because it's basically until you decide that you don't want that data to be part of that anymore. Okay, I see I have a quick question. Are these buckets AWS buckets? Yeah, so Forge itself is hosted on AWS. So we're basically using the same kind of structure. And you can kind of tell it is basically, it behaves like an AWS S3 bucket and so on, but you need to access it through the Forge platform in order to store that. But the same kind of principle itself kind of like applies to these buckets as well. I think I saw something else. Are all Autodesk clients related data hosted on AWS? Forge data itself, yes, it is hosted on AWS. We have two regions. We have US region and Europe region. And then they kind of like follow the same kind of like security structure and also permission stuff with the data. So for example, if your data is hosted in Europe, it does follow the GDPR compliance and so on. Correct, BIM 360 and ACC data too, because those are applications that are built using Forge. Yep. Okay, so now then we have a function for listed the objects. So one thing that we need in order to list the object is, well, first we need to ensure that that bucket actually exists, right? Where we're going to be reading that. So now we're going to be using a different API, which is going to be the objects API. We're going to get the objects, passing in the bucket. So for getting the objects, we need the bucket key, and then just information about that item itself that it's being hosted in there. And with the same thing, again, with the authentication to be an internal token. Later on, we have the uploading mechanism. So again, ensure the bucket exists. And then we're gonna do the FS, which is the file system read file sync functionality within Node in order for us to be able to upload that to create the buffer to later on use the upload object function within the objects API as well, that it's coming from Forge. For that, we need the Forge bucket, the object name, the byte length for the buffer, and also the buffer in order to upload it together with the get internal token. Later on, we export those, and now we have access to list objects and upload objects. Okay, so now let me save this. Okay, now it's saved. I don't know why it was not saving. So now, let me see. So now we're gonna go into the use of the derivatives. So we will be implementing, I guess, a couple of helper functions for this process of derive or extract this various information that comes in from those CAD files. So when we upload the files, we can either upload 2D drawings, 3D drawings, and so on, and then get back geometry and also metadata from those models. The Forge viewer understands a format which is called SBF, and this SBF itself is what we can get as a result of using Model Derivative API. So let me actually open this. So the Model Derivative API takes your source file, does a file translation, which in this case, you can do, let's say, a Revit file into an OBJ or an STL or an SBF in this case, which is what the viewer understands. Or you can do as an output to the thumbnails. So it's a preview of that model into PNG format. So you can use that to, let's say, create a gallery, similar to what BIM 360 or ACC actually does whenever they're showing you a little preview of that model. So you can get that as a result as well from the model derivative. You can do geometry extraction. Let's say you are a provider of doors and you don't care about anything else in that construction model, only about the doors. So you can filter out in order to do geometry extraction of only the doors within that model. So you can do that and then just get the geometrical content for that. But let's say you don't care about the geometrical content, you only care about the data. So, and then you can do an extraction of the data of all the different parts of the model or just one specific one. So you can do also data extraction when using Model Derivative API. Okay, so that's basically what we're gonna do. We're gonna be using Model Derivative API, creating a md.js file, so model derivative, in order to use the derivatives API in order to get back request a translation for that model that we're going to be uploading into the bucket, and then using the get manifest functionality just to let us know what's the process and how long we have left in order for the translation to finish. So translation itself takes some time. I would say not hours. Sometimes it's just a couple of seconds, depending how big your model itself is. Could be maybe like a minute or so. But once translated, and once we have that SBF file, the visualization and loading mechanism itself, it's kind of like immediate after you got that first part kind of like out of the logic itself. So again, we're gonna copy this and we're gonna go into services, Forge, and then we're gonna create the md.js file. So we are Forge md.js. And then when we do the translation of the object, we have to pass in the URN, which is basically a path to the location where the file is stored, in this case, the bucket, the file name, and the extension. But everything will be encoded in base 64, and that's what we use and recognize as an URN. The output of that is going to be an SBF with the visualization for 2D and 3D enabled if the file contains it. It's not going to make up a 2D if it doesn't have it. Okay. And then later on, basically translate that, and then just give us back a response when that part is translated, and then just have it ready for us to use it later on whenever we pass it into the viewer. Let's see. Okay, so now we did the logic for those two, the storage with the data management service and the translation with the model derivative service. So now we need to create those server endpoints, because whenever we want to load the page, let's say we want to list the objects that are available within the bucket, if there are any. Okay, so that's the reason we're going to be creating a router with that /. So it's basically like you were going into localhost, and then you do like a / here, right? So right now it doesn't have anything because we haven't created that one yet. And that's what we're going to do. So did I come into the right place? 1 second, I got lost. There we go. Yeah, so, and then we're gonna do one also for the URN status. So let's say if we wanna figure out what's the process, or into what kind of percentage our file actually it's doing, we can always call to this endpoint. So it will be similar to what we're doing with the URL for the token. So we can get into that by just doing the status check. And what else? Model file is missing. And this is for translating. So the formatable middleware, it's used in the post request handler to make sure that the multi-port form data content, file properties, parse is available. So this part itself is that whenever we have, like, let's say really big files, we have a way to split up the uploading part of that process. And then from there, you can break up the model into small pieces in order to speed up the process of uploading that data itself. Okay, so now let's get this one out of the way. So we're gonna need a new routes file, which is going to be called models.js. So in the routes folder, we're gonna create models.js. Okay. So formable URN status and / pass it using express formable. From the OSS, we're going to be using list objects, upload objects. And from the MD, which is model derivative, we're going to be using URNifying, which is basically turning your URN into base 64, like I said before. Get manifest and translation objects. Okay. Save this one. And last but not least, since we added a new route, we need to add that new route into our server.js file. I copy all of it and go into server.js. So now we have that new express app use for API models that it's going to be pointing into routes models.js. So the router will handle now 3 types of requests. So get API models basically will, when the client itself wants to get a list of all the models available for viewing, this API endpoint will actually be able to give it to us. If you want to check the status of the translation, you can also go into this link in order to check the status. Or if the client wants to upload a new model, you can do it through the post API models. But since we're going to be building all that logic with a nice user interface in order to not be calling separate endpoints, we're going to be able to just use it as a normal web application where you upload files and let the process itself happen by just going through the server logic that we just built. Okay, so now if we restart our server, I think everything is saved. So now if we restart our server, if we go into port 8080 again, but now we're going to go into API models in the browser, you're not going to get anything because this is basically a new bucket. So if we open a new one, if we call back, let me see. This might be something else that I'm actually messing up. But to respond with JSONs with names of URL. If this is your first time working with JSON empty array, so this is what we should be getting and not what we're actually getting right now. So it's probably because I messed up somewhere. So let me find out where I messed up. So API models, routes, models.js, models.js. And this is always good to also kind of like get back to finding out this can happen to you guys so we can debug and find out what's going on. This and that. Config.js, lowercase to basic app, package log, server. So let me stop all of that. Yeah, check that because somewhere sometimes I was getting the same error. All right, yeah, we'll figure it out right now. Hopefully it's not something in the tutorial that we're missing, so we'll see. Fun times. Okay, so env 3D could be because of this optional naming. Let me try to put something. So Jaime, April 2022, Bootcamp, Node.js -1. Okay. And now we're going to do another start debugging. So server listening, import this. Then yeah. Okay. So it seems like we are probably by not putting anything into the forge buckets, it's having an error because probably there is a bucket that already exists with that. But my logic tells me that it should be using this instead. So I don't know why it's using it. So before you change it, let's do this. Let's just stop completely your server and do restart of the server. Don't change the value that you have in your env for this. I just want to make sure that actually it's not that. Okay. And then let's just give it another shot and try it. And I can actually enable your mic. Okay, so you restarted, try several times, and you're still getting the same error. All right. So now in that case, change the name of the bucket. Like let's do like reg April 2022 Bootcamp Node.js -2. -1. It doesn't matter. Like it's gonna be a complete new bucket, and then save that one. Cancel everything with your server, and then just restart. And if not, let me finish with this, and then we can take a look at your screen. Okay. So now let me move forward, and that way I can. Was that it? Oh yeah, no, that's it. So actually, we can check your stuff. So basically, since we don't have anything yet, we should get a response, which is an empty array, which is expected in this case. So as you see, this is my token. This is not it. But this one, it's the empty array. And the reason why is because since it's a brand new bucket, there's nothing in there yet. But once we start uploading files to the bucket itself, we'll come back to this endpoint, and then we're gonna start seeing how actually gets populated with that listing. So with that, Okay, so now I'm gonna check your screen, and that way we can see what's going on. Where are we? Stop sharing. Want to make sure that I'm not missing anything else. Okay, all right. So Rick, I'm gonna promote you, and that way you can show me. Oh. Okay. I just saw your message that said that it worked. Okay. Do you need any other help, Rick? You can unmute now if you want.
Are you there? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm here.
I was struggling to find the controls. It was showing the errors at first,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden it kicked the proper response.
Yeah.
So I don't know what was going on, but
it sometimes Node.js itself kind of like gets stuck for just a couple of seconds. But yeah, that will do it. So did you change the name on
yeah,
yeah? Okay.
I changed it.
So okay, so that's something I'm gonna take a note on that, because the tutorial basically should not need that. It should actually be reading if you don't have this bucket. And I think it's because since we do have a value in that bucket, it's reading that value. And it's not going into the OR that we have in the configuration. And that's the reason behind. So it should be completely empty instead of going to that other one.
And I think for, where was it? That was when it specified that as a OR path. What one was that? What file was that? With the OSS
Let
file?
me show you. Yeah, so it's basically this one. So you see config, right?
Oh, it was a config.js.
So for example,
yeah. So if you put forge bucket after the, like, just swap those two, and that it should default to the first one, and then if it doesn't, then it'd go to the other one.
Exactly. Well, the thing is, like, if we swap it, it's always gonna do this one, right? So what I think we should do in order to not do this one first is that this shouldn't be here. It should be empty.
In other words, you should never specify it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because otherwise it'll default to something that still doesn't work.
Exactly. And it's defaulting to that string that came in from the tutorial. Okay. So that string itself, it exists because probably got created at the first time that they were testing the tutorial itself.
I got you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's
shouldn't
what's
be an
happening.
Environment variable, unless, well, of course, you change it for.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I'll pass along the notes. It's good to always find like this little things. Like I said, you guys are like first ones testing this stuff, so I'm glad that I'm finding something to come back and tell them, like, yeah, this thing needs a fix.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thanks for getting it straight, because that wasn't working. Is there a way to default that in the config now to run the same basic formats?
The same name that you gave it?
Well, not so much that one. Just like if we're concerned with keeping it kind of secret, right, as an environment variable.
Yeah.
And right now it's kind of hard coded in config.js, right?
Yeah. So what I will do, it's
well, it's still pointing to the Forge client ID, which is an environment. Yeah. Okay. Never mind.
Yeah, exactly. So you can keep this part as well, like this, and it should be okay. Like this client ID itself doesn't get exposed anywhere because basically you're having it in a completely separate file, and that's the reason we use this environmental variable folder. Okay. But yeah, other than that, I think it should be okay.
All right, that works. Okay. I'm not worried about it.
Awesome. Good.
Thanks for the help.
That makes one of you. All right, let me send you back. All right. how did everybody else do? Do we have any other questions and so on? I'm actually gonna leave you again for another, what is it, 113? Next one should be, let me change my slides again. Okay. 2 o'clock. Actually, we're gonna give it a little bit more time because I know some of you are in like Central Time and also East Coast. So I want to give you time for lunch. So that way you don't die and I don't die. We're gonna do 12. I know you're not seeing my screen right now, but I'm like changing a couple of things. Now you're gonna see it. Okay, where did my Zoom go? There we go. Okay, so now I see we have one more chat. Awesome. Okay, so now I change and like basically said, this is, you're gonna see it because I have a bar right there. So your turn again to go over the session 3, which is basically the OSS.js, the MD.js, and the server.js and model.js endpoints. It is trying to play with Pacific time, coast times. So it is, let's deduct. We're gonna give you like an hour and a half, hour 45 right now, just as a break. And that way you guys can have like some lunch. And then we'll be back again at 12 p.m. For session 4. Session 4 probably, it's gonna be our last session. So it's actually quite quickly. But this is kind of like the one that we're gonna be structurizing everything into a visual component. And that way we have an application that we can showcase and show off to our colleagues that didn't attend the bootcamp today. And if we have time, also I'll show you some other cool extensions that we can add into it. But then remember also that on Wednesday, my colleague, Michael Beal, is going to be doing a dashboard functionality tutorial and also some extensions tutorial that we have, new ones for you guys. So it's going to be really cool to just expand your viewer to have, let's say, some representation of data in graphical content, or even creating something like an Excel table that you're able to like populate with data and so on. So it starts to get a little bit more interesting with that part. But yeah, so I'm gonna leave you now for some time. Still feel free to add your Q&A, your questions into the Q&A section. Put up in the chat. Once I'm back, I will look into those, and any questions, or if you need me to do like some screen sharing with you, like I have done with Rick and Liang, in order to help you out, happy to do so. So yeah, hopefully you guys are gonna have something good for lunch, and we'll be back soon. So thank you so much, guys. Recording, that will do it too. Okay, so how did it go? I hope lunch was good. I had a lovely lunch actually. So lunch was good. So it was your turn to do the OSS.js file, the MD.js file, and also the server endpoints with model.js, and then being added into server.js. So many JSs, right? But basically, you needed to finish up since it's the first time that you're creating this kind of bucket. You were gonna get the empty brackets. So in some way, like that was the result. Not a lot of fun, I guess. Not very entertaining, but it will start getting populated with this next session. Okay, so if you guys don't have any questions, I'm gonna move along with the last section, which is gonna be session 4, which is dedicated to the viewer and the UI. So finally, some visual stuff that is gonna be a little bit more than just JSON structure in the screen. So for this session, we're gonna be adding a couple of things. So we're gonna be adding the viewer logic in the viewer.js file. And if you notice, we're gonna start doing stuff in the www root section. Also, we're gonna be adding the application logic. So we need to tell how the web page is going to get structured and what's going to be the action of every single thing that we're going to be adding into that web page or web app in this case. And then the same thing also with the HTML page, and then just give it some styling so that way it doesn't look awful. And then we have a toolbar in the middle and then a viewer small size on the top. So we're just gonna pass on some styling into that to make it look cool, pretty, and sexy. So yeah, so let's do demo. Let me stop my share and switch screens again. Kill this one. I am. Okay, so we're back here. So again, if you did everything correctly, and I hope that the answer is yes, you probably got the empty brackets, similar to what I got. That's okay. That means that we're doing good. Okay, so now we're gonna move along with the viewer and UI. So viewer logic. So basically, we're gonna start implementing the functionality in order to create and initialize a viewer. So the viewer itself, similar to all the different services, they need an access token. In this case, we're going to be using that public token. So with the scope of only viewables read, since the token itself on the client side doesn't need any other kind of special permissions in order to read the location where the model is stored, and then also display the geometry in the metadata. Okay, and then the initialization of the viewer, where we basically pass in the value of the access token. We initialize the viewer. Oh, this is nice. They added some configuration that we can pass into the initialization of the viewer, passing in an extra extension, which in this case is going to be the Autodesk document browser, in order to be able to see what's available within that model that we're going to be uploading, if there is anything available to, right? So that's another thing. Then we start the UI viewer component for the viewer. In this case, this is the toolbar. So it will start up the toolbar that has navigation, functionality, measuring, section, properties, model, browser, and so on. We start the viewer, and then also we can set a theme, and then we're going to be using the light theme. And I will show you some of the other themes that you can change if you decide that one actually it's one that you like the most, and then just resolve the viewer, which means that we're going to start like basically that it's ready to be visualized. Once that is done, we're going to be loading that model. So it passes in the viewer that got initialized, the URN, which is this case is the path and encoded base64 encoded, which is again the location to the bucket that has our store SPF file, which is what the viewer understands. If the document loaded successful, so we're going to be doing a viewer.load load document node, passing in the document and getting all the default geometry to later on fully load this. Yeah, so let's get started with this. So viewer logic, go back to here. And now we're gonna be going into the www root folder. So we're gonna add one file here. We're gonna call this one viewer.js. And we just wanna make sure that we have low model, init viewer, and you cannot see that because of my Zoom, and get access token. All right, cool. So now save this one. And now I'm gonna keep going. So everything in this code before got updated in order to use ESX expert modules. So that init viewer, it's basically what initializes the Forge viewer into the DOM container of the web application. So now for the application logic, so it says basically, next we will define the logic of the web application itself. We will be needing to populate the UI with all the models available for viewing. So those models are gonna appear in some sort of tool, it's not a toolbar, it's like a drop-down menu, sorry. And at the beginning, when we load it, that's gonna be empty because we don't have any models in our bucket. But that's gonna change as soon as we start uploading models into that bucket, get translated, and they become available for visualization. And then we're gonna be creating a main.js file under the www root subfolder of the project. So basically www root main.js, and this is the main client-side file that is going to get initialized at the time that the application actually loads. So that's the reason we have an init viewer that we created on the previous JavaScript file. We are going to be setting up a model selection function in order for us to be able to get a call to the API models, which is basically this one. Right now, like I said, it's going to be empty. But once it's not empty, it's able to get back the information about those models. And then depending on what do we select into that dropdown, it's the one that is going to be passed on into the viewer to later on load that specific model. If there is an error and everything, we have a catch in there in order to let us know that will not list any models. So we need to see the console for details, which probably is what is gonna show as an error the first time that we try, because that dropdown is gonna be empty. Okay, so now later on, we're gonna be setting up the model upload. Basically, is the functionality for us to be able to upload models into the web application. So we have an upload constant, an input one, another one for the models. So it's basically getting that information from the web page itself. You see that it's doing a document.get element by ID that gets defined from the index.html. Once that upload is clicked, it's going to do an input click on it to later on pass into an async functionality to be able to just upload the parts of the file. You can upload zip files too, but I don't think I'm gonna do that. It's a little bit too complicated. Whenever you do a zip file, you need to make sure that the zip file name and the parent file inside of the zip file needs to match the name. Other than that, the translation kind of goes through some kind of weird process, and we're gonna try to avoid that. And then again, we check and we fetch into that API models to see what's available in there. Get model selected. This is whenever we end up selecting which model is the one that we want to display into the viewer. Show notification, clear notification. I think that's it on the main one. So let me add this one. So main.js into the www root. So www root, gonna add main.js. Okay, so we're checking that we have everything. So clear notification, show notification. So you're gonna see this one's kind of like popping up whenever we're doing uploading, translating, and so on into the application in a bit. Some case statements for what's going to happen when it's in progress, what happens if it fails, or if it didn't do, like if it just went through it with no problem, like just load the model into the viewer. Then we have setup model, get element, init viewer, load model from viewer.js, which we already create. Okay, save this one. And then we're gonna go into, so we will be defining the UI with the HTML markup and also the CSS. So HTML looks quite simple. We do a reference to the style.css of the viewer CSS. We're up to version 7.60 something. I don't remember exactly what number, but in order to just get the latest one that it's available, we can do a 7 dot and then the asterisk in there. We give it a title. We focus into the main.css that we're going to be building after. And then in here, we need a logo to be displayed into the application, similar to something like this, for example. Title, then we're going to have the HTML like identifiers for the models, the button, the input, and then later on the reference to the script of the viewer API, which basically, again, using latest version 7 asterisk viewer2d.js allows us to load the viewer into the HTML markup. So we're gonna select this one. And again, this one under the www root subfolder, index.html. www root, new one. HTML. Okay. So save this one. And last but not least, we need that CSS. So we're just doing some styling into the entire body, the HTML, the notifications, the header, the models, we have one for the viewer. I think it's using one of this overlay ones. So same thing again on the root folder, main.css. Root, new, CSS. Okay. Last but not least, you remember that we had in here a reference for a logo. So we need a logo. Logo can be anything, but we give you a couple ones here that you can get. So for example, if we do this one, it's a Autodesk Forge logo. So you can do that one. I think if I click on it and I save image, it's my taxes. Bootcamp here, www root logo, boom. Do we need the file icon? I don't think we do. So logo PNG, main.js, reference to that main.js file. So let's not forget that. Sorry, it's not gonna find it. I think that's it. Yeah. So now our folder structure should look something like this. So main application, and let me just quickly check my chat. What is the viewer 3D.js? So that's the reference for the viewer API itself. So as you notice, we did not install anything for the viewer. So since it's a JavaScript API, we can do a reference to that script in order for us to be able to access all the functionality within there. Same way that you could probably access and modify if you want. I don't recommend it. And I think we have some kind of like written paper about like that needs to be kind of like kept in the way that it's designed, because other than that, like if any kind of functionality goes off into that you're not expected behavior or anything like that, we don't support that. But who am I to stop you from your creativity? So it is available. Basically, the viewer API, it's based using 3.js. The thing is, like, it's a modified version of 3.js. It's quite old. We're working on a new one in order for you to be able to have like newer functionality from 3.js, and you can access 3.js with the reference of the viewer itself. So it is available in there. And then let me finish this, and if you have any other questions, I can unmute and then we can have a chat. Okay. So the folder structure, basically VS Code, launch.json, and then we have the folder routes with Auth.js, models.js, folder services, subfolder forge, Auth.js, md.js, oss.js, www root. This case, it seems like it's referencing the fav icon. I did not add it. I think it should be okay without adding it, but in case we need it, we have it available. Index.html, logo.png, main CSS, main.js, viewer.js. Outside of that, at the root level, config.js, the two package JSONs, and the server.js. So if everything went as expected, I think we can actually test it out. Okay. So let's see. Did I save everything? Yes. Let me restart my server. Okay. So now head back here, clear this once. So the one that was giving error that cannot get, now we can refresh. And now we have something here, right? As of now, there's nothing happening. So our dropdown is empty because our models are still empty, right? But now we can, sorry. Move this one here. Yeah. But now we can upload something to it. So let's do upload. Not this. I have some models that I can use here. So we're gonna use AC Rack Basic sample, the classic one. So now we have that notifier that is basically uploading that Rack Basic sample project. Once it's uploaded, the translation process starts, and it's gonna be checking the get manifest until at some point we do get a preview of that model, and then it just loads into the viewer. So now, since we uploaded something here, if we go back to our models, we now have information about the name of the model that got uploaded and the URL. And the URL, if we decode that. Code base64. There's a website for that, so it's quite simple. You can do it from terminal too, but let's just keep it easy. You see that if you remember my bucket name, Jaime, April 2022, Bootcamp, Node.js-1, / the name of the file that we just uploaded. And then URN, ADSK, object, OS, object. So this entire line encoded into base64, it's our URL. Okay. So now we head back. Just refresh this to see if it loaded. Voila, we have a model now. So now we have a model and everything loaded into the toolbar itself. You remember I told you that you can, we set up an environment, which in this case was, which one was it? Was it light gray or simple gray? I think it was. Let me remember. I don't remember what it was. Your, yeah, light theme. So light theme. Where is it? This one? Oh, okay. No, so that's environment appearances. Theme. I think that's actually wrong. It should be some of these names, because in that way you can. Let me try something just for fun. We were not this. Sorry. Break this. Let's see. River. Oh. Bad. Is it on the set theme, or let me see? I remember what this thing was, but let's see. I might be wrong actually, and then I need to do it somewhere else. So basic, yeah, okay, cool. All right, so now you can change different kind of like themes in there and so on. Let me check my chat. I see that some of you are light themes the toolbar. Yes, you're right. Thank you, Michael. IVL environment is different, changing around. Yes, okay, now I remember. Huh, okay, that's what 2 weeks of vacation will do to you. Thanks, Michael, for bringing it up. So Michael is on the call. Michael is gonna be teaching the dashboard and extensions bootcamp on Wednesday. So be sure to join. He's quite good. So let's see. Mark, theoretical, could you integrate something like the Google Maps API now has a WebGL overlay into the Forge viewer? Yeah, you can. Michael, where are you? Are you as a participant or are you as a, Michael can talk to you about it.
Hey gang.
Hey, Michael.
Yeah, there's a blog post on how to do it, and it uses what's called Geo3, which is someone else wrote it, and it's this really cool. In fact, if you do a Google and then type in Geo3, with a THREE.
Yeah. Space or together?
You can do it together, I think. It usually has a dash in there. There it is.
The map box?
Add Mapbox Google Maps in the Forge viewer.
Yeah.
And I could talk about it, but it's just easier to read this. Yeah, this is just it's an extension you can just drop in, and then it'll add it'll add a map provider. So a map provider is like Google Maps or Mapbox or OpenStreetMaps. They're all providers of these tiles, and yeah, you can configure a extension and tell it what to use, whether to use Google Maps or yeah, anything you like. So if you just move the mouse around a bit, drag it around, yeah, maybe zoom out. There we go.
There we go. Ooh, way too much.
Oh yeah,
I'm using a spur mouse from the office in Boston, so it's a little bit sensitive.
oh, the zooming, yeah.
Yeah,
So this is
yeah.
one way to.
The zooming is really crazy.
You can. I think if you click button 1 and button 2, it does some fancy zooming. I can't
Yeah,
remember. Oh no, maybe not.
dummy, dummy too. So I guess it's not doing that.
I guess I didn't do that bit. What if the model author didn't set control points up correctly? Okay, I'll leave that to you. Go for it.
All right. So what model author didn't set control points up correctly? What do you mean by the control points?
Oh, maybe they mean the site points. You know, the control points for where the location is. When you're aligning the map to the model.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Survey
server points. Got it. Yeah, so if they haven't, then the model's just going to locate to like some random place on the planet, and you can configure the. If you read the blog post, it talks about how to manually position
the transformation.
the lat long position on Earth. So you can kind of choose where you want to place it. If
It goes into a lot of detail here. So I will say, yeah, I send you guys the link in there so you can have fun. But thank you, Michael. I didn't know you were around. Okay, so yeah, you're right. This lighting, not the thing that I was thinking it was. Why did I thought it was that? So let's get back to lighting. Yeah, there we go. I like the transparent one better.
yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, it's probably a bug, but yeah. All right, so now we have the model loaded. As you saw in the extensions part, there is this document browser one. So document browser allows you to visualize the different kind of available like views that the project itself has. So you can get to do, let's say, a loading of the 2D one if you want to like investigate that a little bit further. We just go back to the 3D one. Same thing with a 3D view of that. I want to add one more that I always like to share with people. I just think it's a cool one. Let me see. We can do Autodesk visual. Is it like that? Clusters. You probably remember better than me. Let's see. Yeah. So, like, I don't know if you've seen the explode mode, but explode basically breaks out the model, right, in parts. But this visual clusters, it's actually quite nice because you can do like some separation by category of all the different things in the model. One thing that I found the other day was that using this same one, you can do like a control one. Let's say if you care only about the doors, right? So only the doors in the model. So you have the door selected, and you do visual clusters. You can do just a grouping of the doors itself, and it just keeps the rest of the model intact. So you can show all objects. So now you have that model completely separated, and then just the doors in one side, and then the rest of the model in there. And then you can just like bring them back into the view. So now we have the doors back. So yeah, it's a cool one in order for you to do that. So let's see questions. Does the bar has always the document browser button? It doesn't have it always. That's the reason we added into this configuration for the extensions. So this is where you can add different kind of extensions that we have available for you guys to use, or whenever you're creating your own extension, you can also add it into the configuration. That's something that you're gonna be doing with Michael on Wednesday when you guys get into interact with extensions and so on. So he's gonna teach you how the basic skeleton for the extensions are actually created, and then where you add them at the time of using the viewer itself. So it's good to keep this project today handy, because you're gonna be building on top of that on Wednesday. So the extensions are actually they're built into the viewer. This Autodesk ones, so they're built into the viewer API, so that's where they are available. They're not part of the Node modules. When you create your own ones, basically you host them within the same kind of like folder structure of your project, and that's where you can reference them. If you were asking because you wanted to modify some of that stuff, I think you can do it, and I've seen people actually interact with them and do them, but it's like we have this collection of extensions that you can see. Let me open this one, because in that way you get not like the same kind of experience that you guys will get. My other one has some other stuff turned on right now. Did I lose the viewer? Where's the viewer?
Viewer SDK on the left.
Oh,
Yeah, I know. It's tricky now. It's all changing.
All right. So now extensions. You have quite a lot of different extensions in here. I don't see document browsers here. So basically Autodesk.document browser, and then you can use those ones in there. There's some ones for GLTF now. I actually didn't know about this one. Huh. Interesting. Have you used this one, Michael?
Yeah. There's a blog post on it.
Awesome. Good. You got a blog post on everything.
Yeah, if you don't want to load OBJ files and you want to, you've got an OBJ file you want to load into the scene, you can do that. But if you've got a GLTF, then you can load a GLTF using this extension here.
Yeah. So another question is that now we're rendering from Node.js, but if I want to render from React.js and using Node, yeah, it is possible. Like right now we're using just like vanilla JavaScript, right, on the client side. But you can swap this to use your React like front end, and then just keep using Express or Node.js in the back with no problem. And we have some samples also in our GitHub repository that are using React on the front end. What kind of API functions calls actually begin to cost something? Okay, so when it comes to cost, we have a section here which is called pricing. And let me clean some stuff up because I cannot see. So what costs and what doesn't cost? So in order for you to use the Forge platform, well, the first cost is the subscription, right? It's an annual subscription. The cost of that is $300 a year. It comes up with 100 cloud credits. So for $300, you can use all the services for a year. Those 100 cloud credits that includes allow you to use everything in the Forge platform. But some services have a cost. And the one that we use today that had a cost, it's the model derivative API. So right now we translated a Revit model. So a Revit model is considered part of the complex jobs category. So in this complex job, we can find Revit, IFC, and Navisworks files. Okay. So every time you translate a version of that, it's going to cost you 0.5 cloud credits. If you use anything else other than those three file formats, it's going to cost you 0.1 cloud credits. So let's say you can translate 10 AutoCAD files for the cost of 1 cloud credit. Some other APIs that have cost, for example, design automation. So at the end of this bootcamp week, we are going to have a design automation bootcamp that allows you to basically automate different tasks from the engines that we have available within design automation. Those being AutoCAD, 3ds Max, Inventor, Revit, and Civil 3D. So you can automate tasks like you will usually do in whenever you're doing something, let's say like a plugin in Revit, like Revit API, and you want to automate that directly on the cloud without the need of having Revit, just doing the task itself directly from there. Done. And any other questions? So now the question for me, actually from me to you, is can you raise a hand if you are up to this point, to having the viewer loaded with a model in there? Awesome, Rick. Good job, Jason. Good job, Liang. Good job, Mark. Who else? Come on, let's go. We want to get. Good job, Michael. So we have another question. Yeah, you're welcome, Rick. Okay, Ezekiel, don't worry. We still have time. Let me find you the GLTF blog post. Michael just dropped the mic and then he left. GLTF, Autodesk Porch. You've probably seen my searches on a bourbon that I was interested. Why is my search so slow? Come on. Do it. Autodesk Porch. Porting viewer. They have done so much stuff with GLTF. So let me send you this one. I know this one, it's a good one. Oh yeah, this one, basically. That's the extension one. Okay. And then who else? Let me check. Joe, how did it go? Were you able to get the model loaded? If yes, just raise a hand. No? Okay. Do you need help? I can help out. Okay, awesome. Well, let me know if you need anything, okay? Let's see, who else? I think Felipe, you got it, right? Okay, awesome. Yeah, sure thing. Manish? Boom, beautiful. So we almost at, like, yeah, good number of you got it. So I did see a lot of hands raised. So I'm gonna lower hands, but if you need me to unmute or anything like that, just please raise the hand again. If not, I will continue in order to do the wrap up with the slides, and then I can come back one last time to check how did you guys did. So let me switch screens again. Yep. All right. Okay. So as of now, we finished viewer logic, application logic, HTML page. So what's next? So tomorrow, I'm going to be your host again. We're going to be going through basically same process, different server side, because now we're going to be accessing models from ACC or BIM 260 docs and so on. So if you're part of this training, I will say one thing that you can do in order to come a little bit ready tomorrow, and that way we can kind of like skip up on those sessions and then just kind of like finish quicker. It's make sure that you have your setup correctly into the hubs, and I will show that link right now in a second. And then if you don't join us tomorrow, but you'll join us on Wednesday, Michael will be taking care of dashboards. So customizing the viewer, doing some querying on design data, and also adding dashboards and like tables and so on into extensions that you guys can modify and use within your application. So creating a different kind of experience in order to showcase your data. And then on Thursday, we're gonna have configurators for modifying your designs with design automation. So I think in the Node.js side of it, it's gonna be my colleague, Dennis Grigor. And in the .NET one, I think it's going to be Augusto, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, definitely, I'll say join us in order to wrap up the week with the boot camps. So now, if you need more help, we use Stack Overflow. We have a couple of tags that you can use. So Autodesk Storage, Autodesk Viewer, Model Derivative, Design Automation. They get through a process that they get automated into our ticketing system, so we can pick them up from there. And if you also see any kind of like Stack Overflow questions that you know the answer, I will encourage you to always answer. Kind of like brings you up with points in Stack Overflow. And if you need like more help with, like, let's say you have this kind of specific problem with a customer data or something like that, you can reach us out through the support get help portal in the Forge website as well. So after the event, what you can expect, we're gonna send you an email after we're done with the bootcamp session. So don't expect that email today. I don't think it's ready today. But we're gonna be sending you the links to the recordings in YouTube, links to the slides used during the session, and a survey link. So I will love and appreciate also your feedback. So that way we can learn a little bit more of how we did and how did the bootcamp went. What do you think we can change? What can we do better? And I always try to emphasize this quite a lot, because if you guys are successful, we are successful. So don't be bashful about pushing us in order to do better with the services, the documentation, the tutorials, the boot camps, the process, and so on. So I'll say, please let us know how did it go. Also, since you have acquired new skills into the development, we run Forge Accelerators. Right now we have an upcoming one in May. It's a virtual one. Let's say you have a project in mind that you want to work, you get to work for a week together with my team in order to basically speed up or accelerate the development of that application that you want to work on. We also have a Forge Lightning Talks blog post that has it's a library of different talks that we have done over the couple of years in order to do like different uses of the application. There is interesting topics like GLTF ones in there, AR, VR, multimodal loading, and so on. And then also a good place to always keep up with different or new functionalities incoming is going to be our Forge blog. So I'll say I encourage you to always keep an eye on the blog posts, subscribe to the newsletter. You get like new information of upcoming things that are happening with the Forge platform. Let's say, can you influence those in charge to give cloud? That would be actually good, right? Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I'll propose something. That'll be good. That's not a bad idea, actually. Like if you guys are doing, yeah, no, I agree. I do agree. We seem like a big team. We're not. So any kind of help is definitely welcome. So we can define something there and give you some reward for that. So we're gonna do like the top 5 contributors are gonna get this amount of cloud credits or something like that. But I will bring it up. That's a good idea. Thanks for that. Okay, and so with that, I want to say thank you very much for joining us today. I hope this was helpful for you to learn a little bit more. Let us know how did it go with the new tutorial. I did take notes on a couple of things that definitely we need to take attention to it and then fix. But I like this new tutorial. It's actually quite nice. It was simple. I like the fact that you can expect something as a result at the end of each session. Before it was just like a black box all the way until we finish, and then we just had to find out what was going on. But now we can see like progress, and I think like setting up small goals in order to just succeed with them, it's actually better with that. So I want to ask again, who do we still have left in order to finish up? And yes, please, let me unmute your mic if you want. That might be easier early on.
Hi, Jaime.
Hey.
Thanks a lot for the class.
Yeah, sure thing.
I don't know if you could stop recording, because I may ask a few questions that's related to a project. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So let's see.